Hey guys, it's Pierre from Geo Designs, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to learn Figma in under 10 minutes. Now, I myself have been a UI UX designer for over a decade, so I use Figma pretty much on a daily basis, and my goal is to give you all the basic knowledge so that you can go from beginner to knowing how to work around Figma in a very short amount of time. So let's begin. The very first thing that you want to learn is how to move in Figma, and that is going to be using command and the scroll wheel up and scroll wheel down in order to zoom in and zoom out in a very easy way. And then use spacebar in order to trigger this control, which is going to enable you to pan around the Figma file. Alternatively, you can also use the plus and the minus keyboard in order to zoom in and zoom out in increments. Now, as you can see, we are in this dashboard, which you can download entirely for free. I'm going to leave the link in the description. So we are going to simply go through the basics before jumping into some more advanced concepts. First of all, how to create a frame. A frame is going to be the container element, and you can create it by clicking on this icon, which you just saw, and by clicking with the left mouse button, and then as you release, you can create the frame. Now you're going to notice that whenever you create an element in Figma, on the very right hand side, you're going to see more options, and this is common for each and every element, being a frame, a rectangle, an ellipse, a text layer, so on and so forth. So what you're going to notice is, first of all, you can modify the x-axis and the y-axis by simply clicking and dragging or simply entering a value. And the same is true also for the width. So I can easily modify the width of an element. So if I want an element to be 1000 pixels, I can simply enter 1000, click on enter, and you're going to see the adjustment. Same also for the height. And that is going to be pretty straightforward. After that, you can rotate the element, and you can also see that there are some more advanced features which we're not going to cover, such as auto layout, layout grid. But one thing that you definitely want to know is the fill properties. So you can easily change the colors of an element directly from here. And you can also add gradients in order to create more visually interesting items. And on top of that, you can also add images. So if you have an image that you want to add in your Figma document, for example, over here I have this thumbnail of Figma to PDF. And as you can see, I simply added an element of an image inside of the frame. Now, you can see that over here, you're going to find all the basic elements, such as the rectangle, or the line tool, or even the ellipse, polygon, so on and so forth. So whenever you need a primitive object, just refer to this menu item right here. And as we move along, you can also see that we have the pen tool. Now, this is going to be helpful in order to create vector objects. And if you ever used a software like Illustrator or Inkscape, you already are quite familiar with the pen tool. I have an entire tutorial dedicated to this, so you can learn more about it. But in simple terms, you can create a vector item, and then you can add fills. And another property that we haven't touched upon, but it's also very important, is the stroke property. So the stroke, as you can see here, and by default, let's use an example so that you can easily see by default how this is going to look. You're likely going to not see anything, but if you want to add a stroke to an element, simply click on the plus under the stroke menu, You're going to notice that the stroke is very small. You can barely see it. So in order to increase the size, simply add a bigger value. And you can also drag and drop or actually drag and slide the stroke value so that you can easily create a difference in the stroke. You can set it inside the element. So this is going to be inside of the container, centered. So this is going to be centered in between inside and outside, or just outside. And on top of that, one thing that you can do is changing the color. So if I want a stroke which has a color around these lines, you can easily do that exactly in the same way as you can with the fills. You can add gradients, you can add even images to the stroke. So that being said, let's move on to one of the most common effects, which you're probably going to use at any given point, which is the drop shadow. So as you can see under the effects, if I click on drop shadow, you're going to see over here that we have this very tiny drop shadow. And similarly to the stroke, we need to increase the blur size and in order to see it better. And by default, it's going to be set at 25% opacity. Now, what that means is that you're going to see the drop shadow at just 25%. So if I increase the opacity, you can see how the drop shadow becomes much darker since it's going to be much more bold. And I can also change the y-axis, which is going to change the location of the drop shadow, as well as the x-axis, which is going to change the location in the x-axis. Now, say that we are happy with an element and simply going to go over here, for example, select this frame, and I want to export it. So I want to have this image on my Mac or PC. Simply click on the export and click, and you can select if you want to export this in PNG, JPEG, SVG, or PDF. So very easy to select, and then I can simply click on export frame, and I'm going to rename this to frame YT, save it, and I have it on my computer. On top of that, you can also see the preview. So before you export it, you can see if what you selected is exactly what you want. Now, you might have noticed that in all this time, we haven't talked about the left side of the Figma UI. And this is where you're going to find all of the layers which are these that we created. For example, this vector, this ellipse. You see that the moment that I select one of these layers, I'm going to see it also here. And the frame has this icon in particular. So you can see that all of these frames here are essentially all of these items which are being displayed here on the left side. And this is going to be really useful in just a section which we're going to use all the time, very similarly to Photoshop layers. So the one on top is going to display on top. So for example, if I have this rectangle, which is blue, I'm using the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-C in order to quickly sample the color, and then Ctrl-C again in order to sample this other color. You can see that if I double click to rename this to red and double click to rename this rectangle to blue, if I move the blue on top, it's going to be the one on top. And so keep in mind this cascading style for the overall. And once you're happy with the finished product, say that I want to share this design with someone else, I can simply click on the top right button, which is going to enable me to send or add an email or even multiple emails if I separate it with a comma to my colleagues, and they will be able to access this Figma file. Now, on top of that, there's also another option, which is essentially sharing the link. So I can simply copy the link and share this link with another team member or colleague. And if I share this one, which I just copied, it's going to be a view-only link. But if I want them to be able to edit the design project, I need to click on Can Edit and then copy the link again and send it over, and they will be able to edit, so they have full control over this Figma file. In some instances, you want to give options to edit. In other ones, you simply want them to view the file, but they won't be able to change the colors, change the layouts, mess up the layers, and things of that nature. So really hope that this introduction to Figma was useful. On my channel, I have many other Figma videos, and on my site also I shared a lot of free Figma community files, so feel free to check them out, and I'll see you in the very next video.